But first of all, can you tell me a little bit about what you're currently working on?
Sure. So my name is Matteo Ducci. I'm global head of marketing for Ascential Group. So the company is known for owning several businesses in the event industry and probably mostly famous for the Festival of Cannes Lions, as I'm sure you would have heard of. My duties, go around supporting all the various marketing teams, making sure they deliver their growth through marketing, through their budget, and I work closely with directors and the various marketing teams, and then eventually help them strategize, create, innovate, and then eventually execute successful strategies for the group.
I'd like to hear what inspired you to like study study digital marketing, marketing in general. Is there something that
Oh, yes, that's interesting question because I never really asked myself. This is sort of is the thing is I went with the flow, right? I did art school when I was a teenager. Then I did philosophy, and for some reason it didn't feel right. So I eventually decided to continue my studies with a master's in digital marketing management, which was over 10 years ago, where digital marketing was still kind of a new thing. We were still calling it web marketing at the time, probably. And yeah, just I loved it, probably because I'm a geek inside, and I found the technical side of it, the statistical side, together with the creative one, because you need to really think creatively to excel on digital platforms. Be my, I mean, I just loved it, and I realized I have a keen eye for numbers I didn't know before, and I love business, so marketing turned out to be what makes me happy.
yeah, so it's around 10 years ago now
Yes.
you started out and just looking back, like how much this area of digital marketing have changed. Like what's your like how do you keep up? How do you keep up with all that's going on in this field?
That's interesting. So, funny enough, the basic logics haven't changed. So, the most important thing for in my job is to understand where you are advertising, right? If you are advertising on TikTok or on Instagram, people are different. People follow different social dynamics online, and those basics actually haven't changed. Before you do our job, you need to understand that element. But I mean, in terms of actual physical changes, probably AI over time has really taken over how we do our job. So at the beginning, it was very manual. We still refer to it as cost per click, which now doesn't really exist anymore. And now it's all like AI powered technologies all around. And recently also with creatives as well. So probably you've heard of all the boom of generative AI for copywriting, for graphics, and even video, although probably video right now is not that reliable, is it?
So many people in this field. What have you done? Like you're obviously done a lot of successful campaigns and successful project within the marketing area, like digitally
Yeah.
and what advice do you have to people who wants to stand out? Like what have what's your advice to someone who wants to do
Okay.
this really well?
So let's imagine somebody once is already in the field, right? So they already know the basics. Now the advice is gonna be a controversial one. So listen to me, but don't take my words 100%. Try to interpret it. So my advice is do not necessarily follow the best practice. So one of the things I've noticed on early career professionals in my field is that they stick to what the best practice is without thinking what they're doing. Now, the best practice are great guidance. They're there for a reason. People tried it, they've experienced it, and they are definitely a good base to start. However, if you really want to succeed, challenge the best practice. Understand what works best for your business, your marketing, and test out. And don't be afraid to make mistakes because eventually good marketeers are the ones that make more mistakes than success. Now, to be very honest, I have this average, totally made up number. I mean, I'm not that counting, but I say for one successful campaign, I normally fail 9 times.
Yeah, so a 10% success rate if I'm right.
Yes, if you're a good marketeer, at least like
Yeah,
me.
good deal.
But there are
Yeah,
people
so
that do better. I mean, I guess. I mean, I'm just saying, if you do 10%, you can do well.
yeah, so do you have like a particular campaign or project you've been working on that you are proud of more than others?
Recently I've been supporting the marketing team at the Festival Car Lions in delivering the paid media investments across all the channels like, Instagram, LinkedIn, and so on. The challenge there is that we advertise to businesses, to marketeers, and they have a completely different journey from somebody, I don't know, buying a pair of shoes online, right? So the strategy there needs to be thought through within 6 months periods. So you start advertising 6 months before the actual event date, at least 6 months before. And you don't know whether it's working or not at the beginning because people tend to purchase the pass or their access towards the end. And therefore, when you start investing, it's extremely difficult to find out whether your strategy is working and your strategy is likely to bring those sales later on into the funnel. Now, what we did to avoid that was to implement advanced statistics and correlation analysis to actually identify how our investments impact the performance on the moment. So clearly, we weren't still selling any more passes in the moment, but we were seeing, for example, higher volumes of traffic from organic channels or from direct. And that was correlating with our investments in paid social and paid search. So that gave us that sense of trust that we were in the right direction. We were bringing the right people to the product. And we knew then all we had to do was to promote with the right phasing. So once the awareness phase finished, then moving on to the activation, like showing out, what speakers, what agenda, and that usually is the type of creatives that drive the sales. And it worked perfectly. It was an absolute success.
Yeah, I guess it feels really good when you actually like pull something off and you are like try something new or bold enough to try a
Yeah.
new way.
Yeah, especially when you fail 9 times.
Yeah, exactly. And what are the biggest challenges you see like today uh, for digital marketers? Like,
Yeah, so this is, I think, a general one. It's not just in my industry. I think it's everywhere, and it's that Gen Z and the new way of using social media has completely changed how we do creativity. Now, specifically, I can see now that the usual creatives, only graphics, are losing their impact over the audience, and this is probably because people are starting putting their faces on what they say and what they do, which 10 years ago wasn't the case. Nobody would have put their face on a campaign or on their own channels. So what it means is that we need to adapt to be genuine and be human when we do marketing. And if you've never done it, it is extremely difficult because you are used to the usual, the graphics with the nice content, but then actually you want to put your face on. And I mean, I certainly don't have a face for social media, but I have to be able to do it if I want really to succeed moving forward. And companies have to put faces and not just actors like, a fashion company would or any other. They really need to put real people behind what they're doing because right now, really, genuinity is one of the elements that is making the difference.
yeah, and also with the rapid change we're seeing, like how have AI changed your job from day to day?
Well, so my job has been already heavily AI focused, and I actually studied myself machine learning and natural language processing really to build my own AI sometimes to do marketing. Uh, However, what I've noticed is changing more on the creative side of the industry, where you have these tools now that can pretty much do a fairly good job that replaces potentially a team. Now, I don't believe AI is yet at the point where they can completely replace a human. However, it is at a point where a creative person needs to understand how to use these tools if they want to stay competitive in the job market. And I mean, I've seen people good at using the AI, delivering 10 times faster, 10 times better than people that stop or not are not embracing this new technologies. Now, you do see the AI generated, but in reality, where you then test them out into the market and they still work or they even work better, you don't question it anymore. And I think where probably creative people are holding off is that, oh, that does look AI generated. It doesn't feel human. But actually, that doesn't seem to be yet a problem.
Hmm. Yeah, I had a recent conversation with yeah, the former head of marketing at a huge global company, and she's been in the field for like 30 years, and she said at the strategic level, marketing is still the same. It's about understanding needs and people, and but the tools have changed a lot. Like, would you agree on that? Like,
Absolutely, yes. The tools have changed, but the basic dynamics are the same. So one of the things, for example, I started doing more often now, is to give creative teams marketing training. Because when they understand the numbers, when they understand why certain things impact more than others, with or without AI, they produce much better creatives that are effective. So I think the shift is where marketing and creativity needs to get together and merge into one single thing, in my personal view.
yeah, that's very interesting, because like, how do you balance creativity and data analysis in your marketing strategies?
Well, I mean, obviously there are scientific ways, very old-fashioned A/B testing and structured in a proper way so that you know when just a creative change has an impact. However, we have to be honest with each other. Data doesn't tell you everything. I've been testing different approaches to eventually find out that different creatives work with different audiences at different times. So it's not always an A/B test. You have to understand the global picture. And that's why I'm saying again, measuring the impact of creativity really needs a deeper understanding of who you're advertising to, where you're advertising, and really extrapolate from the numbers more than what the numbers themselves say. So it's not an answer, I'm sorry, but it's basically in a long word, it's really difficult. Yeah, okay, in short terms.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So how do you have any like advice to stay on top of the development that's going on? Like, how do you personally keep up? Uh,
So the reality is, I mean, my view of the future is that none of us will have a job unless we really, really want it, right? So I have this vision of the future, which is probably not a future none of us will live in, but going into that direction, how we'll get into that direction, I believe it's all about embracing what comes up new, making the effort to learn. Now, I'll give you my personal example. I have hated ChatGPT since the beginning, and only recently I've started using it, and I started understanding how much it helps with my own job, how much it makes it simpler, it makes it faster, it makes it more efficient, it makes clearer for people to understand. So it gave a huge difference to my day to day, and I regret that now I haven't started using it earlier. Again, for that emotional barrier, not to embrace the new technologies. So my advice is not make my mistake, embrace it, make the effort to learn it, challenge it, and adopt it, because that will make a difference if you use it correctly.
mhm. So do you have like any personal goals for the future within marketing, where something you're aiming at?
Well, that's I mean, goals for the future for me. Obviously, career development probably is the basic one, but in reality, I'd like to start my own business at some point, right? I like to learn enough to feel confident that I can really run my own, I don't know, marketing agency or brand. The thing is, the more I'm learning marketing, the less confident I'm becoming. So I keep on feeling like, okay, I have to learn a bit more. I have to learn a bit more. But probably just start, right?
Yeah.
Don't tell my boss though.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're done really well, and
Thank you.
yeah, there's a lot of aspects when you start a business outside of marketing, but I guess. But I think yeah, you've done a lot already, so I think shouldn't be too
Thank you.
far ahead.
That's it. We'll meet as fellow owners, business owners, so maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what's the greatest lesson you've learned with the tech environment you've been into and like other founders or colleagues?
Well, again, the greatest lesson is never take a position with anything, specifically in marketing. Now, one of the things that still surprises me when I, for example, hire a new person in the team that doesn't have much experience, and they come up with crazy ideas that no common sense would suggest you should go ahead with it. I normally do the opposite. I learned how to say, you know what, go and give it a go, try, make it work. Now, again, 9 times out of 10 doesn't work, and I was right, but there is still that one time that it does work, and it does incredibly well, that teaches everybody something new, even the people that have years and years experience. So that's the biggest lesson I have is really never take a position. Challenge
Yeah,
even what you think you know, because you might be still wrong.
yeah, it's really interesting to get like new eyes and also unexperienced eyes on different ways of like really question how we're doing things sometimes.
Yeah,
Also see that
absolutely.
in some of our work and yeah, it can be. I think that's probably the only way to learn. Like you have to just go out and try it, and then maybe you succeed, maybe you learn. So
Yeah, that's it. I mean, do calculate your risks though. Don't go all in at your first try. You know, do it step by step. That's probably the other advice I'll give you because it's easy to make
yeah,
these mistakes that you can that you can easily save or repay in a way.
yeah. So um, how do you think companies can recruit? Like how do you find the best marketers out there? Do you have any advice on that?
Now, funny you asked me that. As a matter of fact, I've started a recruitment business for the Gen Z with a friend of mine in Italy, and but we are focused on hiring these new generations because the world of recruitment has completely changed. And if we are going back actually to the same comment I made about genuinity. So for companies to really hire talents, they don't need to be big, they don't need to have a big name, they don't need to be important, they just need to come across as genuine when they recruit. That's what the thing we are seeing now with the changing recruitment world, at least with the younger generations. And I believe it's actually on trend also with the rest of the world. What would you think? Would you agree to that comment? Or have you seen yourself similar?
Yeah, I think like if you compare it the other way, like our the older generation, like our parents, see how
Yeah,
they handle uh, yeah, social media, for example, it's different when you grow up today, and I think there's a lot of value to get from younger people who
absolutely. Yeah.
have grown up in this new era.
We talk like old men. I mean, we're not that old, are we?
Yeah, no, no, but I think it's going so fast. Like even someone
Yeah.
who's 5 year younger than me would have another perspective. They are probably on TikTok, maybe. I'm not
Mm.
that active there. There's so many,
Yeah,
yeah,
I,
channels, and
I shouldn't
it's
say it,
moving
but I'm
up.
not on TikTok either, and I work with these channels, right? So yes, I totally
Yeah,
see your point. You need to have the fresh perspective, and you keep have to refreshing it, like by hiring
yeah,
always new people. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Do you have any role models, like people you think are doing digital marketing or marketing in a very good way?
So this is the thing. I don't really have role models. I never had it in my life, but I do appreciate good work. So whenever I see things that do their foot through in the right way and they're well delivered, I always appreciate it. And the example I have is, I don't know if you've noticed this organic social campaign from ClickUp, if I'm not wrong. I don't know, you might have seen it, the viral video of this guy from HR singing songs and like making fun out of the corporate world, which is a comedy type piece. So but it works really well with the type of products they're advertising. So if you haven't seen it, look, search ClickUp on social media, so you can see their campaigns happening right now. They are absolutely hilarious, and I think it's a great way to promote a product on social media without necessarily being boring. Like, you don't always have to be strict with your communication. You can make comedy, you can make use of comedy to grow your brand, and so on. So that's, if I can give you a role model, that would be it. Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting. Do you think like many companies don't dare to take that risk to like be funny or like do something?
so I mean, it's complicated because it depends on your brand positioning, right? You can't just use comedy. Not every company can use comedy. Like, take for example an insurance company. I mean, you don't want to use comedy, even if it's fun, right? You have to. It depends really on your branding, and if you have a brand that can be advertised through comedy, then you should take the chance. Don't be ridiculous comedy. Be good quality comedy. Be relevant to your product. Obviously, it's not for everybody, but don't be afraid of it if your brand allows it to. But don't do it if if you are in an industry where you shouldn't really make fun of things. You know what I mean? Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some companies should try it and try comedy where it's not supposed to be funny, and maybe that will work. You never know, as I said earlier, right?
Is there some big brands you would like to work with yourself?
I cannot disclose the question. I'm sorry. No, I cannot say where I would like to work for, because that would be a bit unfair for my current job, because I love
Yeah,
working
yeah.
the company I'm working for, obviously. And but besides that, to be honest with you, I don't normally aspire in a specific company. I like, when I look for a job, I like to understand the people. I like to understand their direction, their vision, and whether I align with it or not. And by
Yeah.
following with this approach, I worked with every sort of company, from tech, from B2C to B2B, all sorts of e-commerce, insurance, finance products. And it's been actually a great way to learn marketing all across. In terms of, again, in terms of like campaigns that really inspire me, or companies that have done well, apart from the example of ClickUp I mentioned, I've seen another ad. I think it was Ocado. It's a British food delivery company. If I pronounce it correctly, please, if you're listening, forgive me. But they actually made an advert of their food delivery service, using the actual people that do the deliveries. And I was curious to actually investigate that, and I started reading the comments under these ads, and it turned out the actual people in the adverts were replying to the comments when they were obviously referring to them. And you could actually see they were real people with real profiles, with family, living their life in the countryside. It was absolutely brilliant. And I love that genuinity element and human element of that type of advertisement. So again, they did great. I think every company should do that. And in a way that is not too staged, although they are staged, obviously. There is a production behind this, clearly highly professional, but not come across as a classic TV ad or video ad where, okay, yes, you put an actor there with a script, so it does flow through, genuinely, which is very difficult, I believe, to achieve. But you probably know better than I do, because you are in the production world. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like just the personal, like when you feel like you're connecting with real people. It's really interesting
yeah.
perspective. And but I'm curious about being in a like executive position within marketing, leading teams. How do you go forward creating good marketing teams? Like what kind of people do you need in the team? What kind of skill set?
So let's talk about marketing without creative. Would that make sense for you? When you talk about marketing team, I talk about just marketing, not creative. Yeah, okay. So in my
Mhm.
view, again, it depends on the business. There isn't one type of creative that works for everybody. So every business has their own culture, their own way of doing things, and their own identity. And a marketeer should be able to either be a good match for the business, or should be able to adapt. Like most marketeers are good at adapting because at the end of the day, that's our job, understanding and adapt. Now, in terms of my personal experience, I find, how would you say, a risk-free environment for marketing team the best for productivity, right? It's often the case when you are in a marketing team again that you make mistakes, all sort of mistakes. If you are in an environment that doesn't actually prize the mistake, it doesn't give value to the mistake, or actually, slam it down or diminish it, you also reduce productivity and you reduce creativity. So you tend to do the boring things that you don't want to do. While if you actually nourish people that make mistakes by allowing them to make mistakes in a controlled environment without obviously causing a crisis or anything, there's always the risk element to be controlled. Then, if somebody makes a mistake, don't worry, it's fine. You'll do better. You learn something useful for your next time, etc. So when you are in that type of environment, I've noticed you actually produce a lot better quality work than elsewhere.
Yeah, working in a team now, like especially when you're working from a computer, how important do you think it is to be physically together, or is your team working from several countries, several locations?
Yeah, we work all across the globe. So my day usually starts at 8 a.m. with Asia and finishes at 7 p.m. with USA. So you have to be able to work remotely, right? Because you can't meet somebody from USA every so often. Maybe once a year when you do a global get together. Now the reality is, again, my comment is probably going to be controversial on this one. While I do believe that the flexibility of working from home makes us more productive because we have less distractions. We can do and record our podcast between a meeting and another, or we can make a cup of tea. That means that the hours you are actually working, you are way more productive because there is less risk of the usual office environment interrupting your else. Now, however, I do believe there is a problem with that. Is that if you work from home too much, now in my case, I'm working in the office only once a week, but not mandatorily. So I can easily skip 2 weeks and nobody's gonna run after me or where are you, right? So I can easily work from home ongoing. And I've actually noticed that we are at the same, while productivity is good, we are losing on cultural. We are losing on building a team because yes, you can still do that through remote interactions via Zoom calls or Google Meets, etc. But you can't really nurture that off duty relationship that you will normally do in a work environment. When you are in the office, you stop for a coffee break and you chit chat about your family, or you go out for a quick drink. These things can't happen when you're working remotely because nobody sets up a meeting to talk about, and I think in that sense that is potentially damaging the quality of a company because the culture of the environment impacts the outcome of what you do. I personally believe so. You always have to have the balance. Now, in my case, I believe 1 day a week is probably not enough. I would probably stick to 2, maybe a good balance. But again, it really depends on people and companies. It's not that simple of an answer.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen a huge change of pace just because we can do these digital meetings. It's like before the pandemics, especially, like yeah, it was not as common, of course, as now.
Of course.
And just the pace you can work in when you can have meetings constantly with anyone around the globe. So I think there's something to the pace, but you lose some like human touch and like you don't have the time to talk about like creating bonds and creating strong teams because I think that's also important to build strong teams. Like it's not only about performing, but people, have to like their job and like their company to really perform, I think.
Yeah, but we have to be honest. It's not fundamental because otherwise we would have been screwed during lockdown, right? So I have, the business I work on the side, like startups, it's 99% remote and we are still growing. We are still doing well. So I don't think it's fundamental these days. but is potentially impacting large. I think is an element for large organizations. Larger organizations might see the impact of that more than smaller groups.
I also think there's a challenge for well, there's an opportunity there because uh, when you can work more global, like you have access to everything, there's also more competition. And it's like if you can hire someone from another country, they're just as good or better, and you can save costs, then why not? I think you are competing with a lot more people than maybe before the pandemics.
That's true. Yeah, that's absolutely true because you have the full spectrum. Although, at least in the UK, hiring laws are not that simple. You can't just hire everybody, but yes, there are plenty of freelancers placed all around the world. Like a lot of our most specialized people in the team, they are from all sorts of places like Brazil, Philippines, India. So we do have a very, very diverse team of freelancers. However, don't forget the time zone because that is important too. You need to have people that can comfortably work in the same place. And I have one of my colleagues that she's currently replacing another head of department like myself, and she's based in Brazil actually. And in order to adapt to our times, she wakes up at ridiculous times in the morning just to be there at the same hours as we are. I mean, it's true, but there is a limit to how much you can do that. I guess in Europe maybe it's easier because we are all kind of on the same time zone. But if you start to expand a little bit further than that, you can't really have somebody from Asia and from America working together. And I've seen that happening. So, like in my case, for example, I'm noticing because our headquarters is in the UK. The biggest team is in the UK, but we have offices all around the globe. For the same company, we have team in Asia and we have team in America, and they never talk to each
Hmm.
other. So we actually act as a bridge sometimes and try to have that communication through because you can't ask either of them to be present in the middle of the night just for a meeting. That's not really it
Hmm.
cannot happen.
So working with different cultures and different countries and continents, have you seen any challenges around culture? Like I recently read Culture Map, really great book, and especially around feedback culture in different nations, even within Europe. Like, have you any experiences on that?
You're asking somebody that moved from Italy, as you can guess from my accent, into the UK, and it was a huge cultural shock. So I had to adapt a lot to the British way of doing things, both personally and work related. So, yes, absolutely. But I believe, I mean, compared to when I started working like 10 years ago, I believe the work environment is a lot more international now than it used to be, or at least the company are very mindful when hiring people to make sure that they have that international understanding because you need to have it. But at the same time, I have colleagues that have never worked internationally, placed in all sorts of places of the world. I'm not saying specifics, just not to offend anybody by mistake, but I can see their way of working is significantly different from your own or from the way of working you're used to. And if because you are an international company, it doesn't matter whether your headquarters is UK, you shouldn't force anybody to follow certain unwritten rules. I'm of the belief that everybody needs to adapt. So when I have somebody from that has a stronger cultural approach to work, I tend to adapt to that approach and compromise in between. Because otherwise, you just create conflict and not collaboration.
Yeah, it can be a lot of challenges around that, but it's
Yeah,
also a lot of potential learnings.
yeah. I believe it's down to us to really be international and accept differences. Don't overthink it. But yes, there are. I would say now we are more internationalized than 10 years ago. I think now it's actually way more common to have people from around the world, especially in Europe. So I don't see that as a problem as it might have been like 10 years ago. But I don't know. What's your experience on that? Have you seen that change? Or have you heard other uh, people complain
I
about it?
Yeah, personally, I've seen. a change there with yeah, it's just depends on the field you're working in and what you're working with, of course. And I think I'm working a lot with creatives and filmmakers and people in audio and yeah, just the access to people have changed and people are more open to work across countries and continents. Is my personal experience.
To be honest, I'm thinking the same. Like, since I don't have to go to the office every day, why am I not in some remote island in the equators working from there? I keep on telling myself the same, and here I am stuck in rainy London.
Yeah, I like I said before
But
we
you're right.
started, I just came back from Italy. Like, why not just live closer to the beach and do meetings from a warmer place than
Yeah.
Norway and
Uh,
Berlin?
Yeah, that's actually a good added value of recent times. 5 years ago, you would have never thought about working from a vacation place, right?
Yeah, you just need like connection and then a computer, and then you can basically work from anywhere. So
Yeah,
who
and the right
knows?
time zone.
Yes, that's pretty important. Don't want to
Trust
sit
me on
up all
that one.
night.
The right time zone.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Do you have anything you want to say towards the end?
No, I think it's been great to meet you, Stefan. Like, really enjoyed this session.